We end as we began. Those were the words of Albrecht Entrati, and it has much more significance than you would ever think. Now, earlier in my theories, I had this kind of idea that everything was Albrecht's fault, and he kind of orchestrated everything to work in his favor. But the more I read into this and the more I kind of obsess when it comes to the lore of Warframe and going to the wiki and everything like that, the more I somewhat changed my mind. Albrecht is not the man that I originally thought he was. In fact, I actually think that he's completely misunderstood. But this is a story about the Indifference and Albrecht and what the connection is between them. But I have to start at the beginning. How do we get to the void? How did we enable the Indifference to actually come to us? Well, it all started in Albrecht's lab. He wanted to find a way to traverse the void or find some way to access the Tau system, right? He has been seen as somebody that people laughs at. He's been ridiculed for a lot of his failed experiments, and this was his time to prove everybody wrong. And by everybody, I mean the Orokin Empire. So he found a way to access the void. Up until that point, it was just theories and theorems, but now he had an actual physical way to go into the void. But instead of actually just doing experiments and sending random stuff into the void, he found himself in a position where he said, and he thought to himself, the only way that he can be sure about what is in the void and how to fully understand it is if he go in himself. And that is exactly what he did. He stepped into the void and he kind of explained the sensation where he fell sideways through time, through space, through nothing at the same time. His memories flashed before him, kind of flooding out of his brain, and all of a sudden he fell on the ground. He looked down and he saw the flooring of his lab. Of course, he thought that this was at most a failure. His cherry glass shard was also shattered into a million pieces, and he saw somebody in front of him. At first, he thought it was his daughter Eularia that was with him in the lab, so he looked up. But instead of seeing his daughter, he saw himself, a doppelganger, somebody that looked exactly like him, and that person held out its hand, wanting to help him stand up. Instead of actually taking the hand, he decided to run. The best course of action would be getting out of there, and he ran to the portal again as the doppelganger walked up beside him, or behind him at least. But when he got to his actual laboratory again, he found himself in a position where he couldn't see, he couldn't speak. So instead, he used one of the shattered glass pieces to write to his daughter, "Close the portal, close it." And that she did. But the moment she did it was the same moment when this doppelganger wanted to put its hand through the portal and its finger was cut off. That, now of course we know, is the finger of the Indifference. But that leads me to a very, very interesting theory, I guess it is at this point. When you see the Indifference, when you see the man in the wall, the mirroring of yourself and of everybody around you, the man in the wall usually takes on the appearance of the person it's talking to, right? And it uses nicknames like Kiddo to actually make you feel familiar with it, to kind of get you on its side. But one key thing that I seem to be seeing all the time is the fact that in all of those doppelganger situations, all of the fingers remain, except in one. And that is that massive actual physically man in the wall, the physical wall appearance of the man in the wall. That's the only case where the finger is severed, and Albrecht himself said that he severed his own finger, the doppelganger of himself. So is the man in the wall, the version that we see there, actually just Entrati? The mirroring of Entrati? Well, that leads me to my next point. The man in the wall was actually created, the physical appearance of it was actually created by DE to mimic the Vitruvian man. Which makes me think, is that not a clue as to what the Indifference and what the man in the wall actually is? Think about it like this, right? If you see the Vitruvian man, what does that represent? That represents humanity, the perfect human, right? So does that not suggest that the man in the wall or the Indifference, well, is only us? It's consciousness taken physical form. And that is what the void in itself and in its entirety is. It's just a physical representation of consciousness, the total consciousness of everything. And the moment Albrecht opened that portal, it allowed that consciousness, that physical manifestation of everything and everybody's consciousness to take form. The moment that happened, the moment it gained consciousness itself in that physical form, it did what any and every species ever would do, and that is wanting to survive. Now, if you want to survive and you are a consciousness being or a being of consciousness like the man in the wall, what would be the best course of action to do that? That would be to spread, to infect, to take everything over, because the moment everything gets closed down, the moment that physical connection between the man in the wall and everything around it disappears, the man in the wall ceases to exist. And as a being, that is the most horrible thing that you can ever do and that can ever happen. So at the end of the day, was I right? Well, on the one hand, it is all Albrecht's fault. On the other hand, I don't think it was orchestrated by him. From Albrecht's notes, there was an account taken where he said that when he left the void, when he actually came back,
I wanted nothing but the ease of oblivion at first. I floated.
Because he had to face all the trauma, all the guilt, and everything that happened to him and that he actually caused other people when he went into the void. The void causes you to think about everything that you have done, every piece of guilt that you have ever had, every wrong that you have ever done, and it makes you face that. And that left him helpless. He was in a vegetative state until Lloyd nursed him back to health, and he began to think to himself, maybe, just maybe, there has to be a way to face that entity, that consciousness, to face himself as he actually explains it. And that is why he is doing everything that he currently is doing to prepare himself and to prepare us for that massive battle of the indifference, to face not only this enormous ancient entity, but to face ourselves, to face the human collective consciousness. Because that's essentially what it is. And that brings me back to those famous words. We end as we began. We began as chaos, and we will end as chaos. What do you think about the indifference? Who do you think the indifference is? What are your theories around the indifference? Let me know in the comment section down below, because as I do just theorize, I do believe that any theories are plausible, and this is only the beginning of what we truly need to understand about the story of Warframe. And stay tuned, because I am going to go into the lore of the entire Warframe universe on this channel, beginning, well, with the Warframes themselves, beginning with different characters in the Warframe universe, Albrecht included, and I'm going to tell you the entire story of Warframe, piece by piece. We will be piecing it together. Now, if you want to see my reaction and my thoughts on the new update that is going to be released later this year and 2026, e.g. the old piece, then obviously click on this video, actually that side, right now.